Hey everyone, how's it going? Today, let's take an in-depth look at this beautiful numbers-matching 1972 Chevrolet Chevelle Super Sport 454. And this is going to be a full, in-depth tour of the Chevelle. We'll start it up, show the engine, get an exhaust clip, and go over the performance data, and show you a bunch of the features on the interior as well as exterior. And today, I'm at Foreign Cars Italia in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so, without further ado, let's go ahead and start her up, let it run. Light metallic blue exterior with a full white vinyl interior. Beautiful sound. This particular Chevelle came with the optional full power steering, extremely smooth, practically effortless, as well as power brakes with discs in the front and drums in the rear. You could also get your choice of several different transmission options, one of the ones for the big block being a 4-speed manual, this particular one having the optional turbo hydromatic 3-speed automatic transmission. Very unique shift housing. And we're going to cut on the headlamps, as well as the hazards. And we're going to check out the exterior, shall we? The Chevrolet Chevelle lineup is definitely one of the most legendary lineups in the General Motors history, starting out in 1964 and lasting all the way up until around 1977. When it was introduced in 1964, it later on became part of the whole muscle car race that many of the domestic brands were following in the 60s, in direct competition to its Pontiac brethren as well as other brand competitions such as the philosophy about the muscle car era is basically taking a mid-sized vehicle for that particular day, putting a big engine in it, simple styling, simple features, just something fast and unique and fun to play with. And the Chevelle did that, and it did it well. The lineup ranged all the way from more economy vehicles all the way up to this big block monster we have here. And what's cool is, after the introduction of the Chevelle with its Pontiac competition, the engines became bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the 60s, up until one of the more bigger engines, the 400 cubic inch big block back then. But up until 1970, General Motors had a rule saying any of the passenger cars had no engines with a displacement greater than 400 cubic inches. 1970 saw the release of that and the introduction of the big block 454. And it was around that time also that all the emission regulations and things like that started coming out for the vehicles, which thus decreased the horsepower ratings in the subsequent years. With anticipation of the use of the catalytic converter on the 1975 and later model years, in 1971, GM mandated all of the divisions to design their engines to run on lower octane fuel, low lead, or unleaded gas, since the catalytic converters actually are required to use unleaded gas. And because of this, the engines also had to use a low compression ratio to be able to permit the use of those lower octane fuels. Horsepower ratings subsequently dropped for all the engine models, but strangely enough, this particular 454 was advertised back then as having 5 more horsepower than the previous model year, thus the 365. Interestingly enough, also 1972 was a pivotal year for General Motors when they started implementing the use of net horsepower for the vehicles versus gross. So horsepower dropped tremendously for that year, even though the performance didn't necessarily change, just the way it was calculated. 1972 was the last year for the second generation Chevelle before it was completely redesigned for 1973 and the Chevelle nameplate continuing on until 1977. In order to pop the hood, first go ahead and remove these little safety pins. Pop it by pulling on this lever here. Like I said, this particular one came with the optional high-performance big block 454 cubic inch turbojet V8. Fed through a Rochester 4-barrel carburetor and factory dual exhaust system, this vehicle produces a net horsepower of around 270 at 4,000 RPM and 390 foot-pounds of torque at 3,200 RPM. As far as the gross measures, total horsepower output is around 365. 0 to 60 miles an hour is 6.4 seconds, with a quarter-mile time of 14.9 seconds at 93 miles an hour, and an estimated top speed of around 112 miles an hour. And with a 19-gallon fuel tank, it achieves an estimated miles per gallon rating of around 9 city, 10 highway. Like they say, there's no replacement for displacement. Beautiful engine bay. The interior is pretty standard General Motors of the 1970s. Subtle amounts of styling cues, simple yet straightforward. Padded vinyl door panels with polished aluminum trim, going around key areas with a rib pattern in the center. Padded armrests, all of your polished trim going across the door edge, as well as your subtle SS badging. Manual bucket seats provide a reasonable amount of comfort and support, and definitely a lot more sportier than the traditional bench seat. Polished aluminum door entry guards, as well as a manually tilting steering wheel. And a vinyl headliner, also perforated. So let's go ahead and see how she sounds. Amazing sound. Shut her up. Door panels are nice and tight. Your climate control here, whether you want it more cold or hot, as well as your fan speed. You have your lighter, ashtray, got that big cowl sitting up front and center, and the rear view mirror with the optional day-night function. Another really cool thing about this Chevelle that I really like is the full set of comprehensive gauges. You have your vehicle temperature, fuel, analog clock, your speedometer, tachometer, as well as your voltometer up top. As you saw, your lighting controls, windshield wipers, tilt steering wheel function, as well as your turn signals. Pretty simple interior. The dash is also all fully padded, and if you look down below, you'll see the manual switches to release the air vents to let in fresh air. And down below your parking brake is your dimmer switch to activate your high beams. You also have the full-length aluminum accented center console with modest storage. So, let's go and shut her down. Check out behind the seat. To gain access, there's a little button on the back here that you have to press down. Automatically folds it back to reveal the roomy bench seat in the rear. Back seat room is a little tight, depending on the height of the front passengers. dome lighting, coat hooks. Your aluminum trim also runs across the back panels with the rib pattern in a similar fashion as the front. You also have little ashtrays and your manual windows. So let's go and check out the rest of the vehicle, shall we? And being that this is the hardtop counterpart, you have the absence of the B-pillar, creating a little bit more of clean, smooth lines across to the back. As far as the trunk, it is roomy, traditionally American. And a pretty decent sized glove box. It's also lock-in. The Chevrolet Chevelle, definitely a pure American muscle and classic. And with that massive 454 cubic inch V8 under the hood, definitely a little bit more something special. A timeless classic for many years to come. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this in-depth look at the 1972 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 Big Block. Be sure to stay tuned next time. There's a lot more where that came from. Take care, everybody.